Representative Bacon.
Thank you. As we close, I'd like to share some reflections that were really important to Dr. King as the heart of his message, particularly around nonviolence. Dr. King was often celebrated for this, and as we read this resolution last year, I recall many of us talking about the impact Dr. King had on their lives, and many of us talking about the impact of the steps he took towards nonviolence. I also heard a lot of you share about the burden of what it feels like to carry the weight of fighting for justice with being willing to put your bodies on the line, whether it's for freedom or in the fight for this country. And to think that a man of 38 was willing to do that, I hope that is something that we don't forget in this moment. But in his celebration, we talk about his meanings behind the nonviolent work. In his letters from a Birmingham jail, he talked about this approach. He understood the Black nationalism efforts, and he said there's nothing more dangerous than to build a society with a large segment of people in that society who feel that they have no stake in it, who feel that they have nothing to lose. People who have a stake in their society protect that society, but when they don't have it, they unconsciously want to destroy it. But in the South, where violence took place against Black bodies, even with cameras rolling, he still had to take very measured risks to ensure that the community that he served would be safe. But more importantly, he chose nonviolence, or rather, direct actions of nonviolence, because those direct actions seek to create such a crisis and establish such creative tension that a community that has consistently refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue, not the behavior, so that it can no longer be ignored. The African American community, once they crossed the ocean and were cut off from their parents, once their blood was mixed with their captors and those who took them in on indigenous lands, they made this country ours. And he knew, and the people who marched with him knew, that we should be able to fight for our place. But Dr. King also recognized the miracle that is the United States, that a nation could be kept together by words of shared values. Democracy requires diversity, and diversity requires democracy, managing our differences and shaping our actions to keep us collectively moving forward. From democracy comes tension. Democracy does not allow for the denial of who one is, their history, their pain, for the pain and the fear is what keeps us moving forward. Without it and its acknowledgement, we're doomed to repeat the past. The best ideas come from this tension when we are pushed. The constructive nonviolent tension, he says, is necessary for growth, kind of tension in society that will help men rise from the dark depths of prejudice and racism to the majestic heights of understanding and brotherhood. Since our founding, we have all chosen America, the words, fighting and pushing to become this more perfect union. From the First Amendment, where we chose to not be a theocracy, to the Equal Rights Amendments, where we chose to commit that all people, regardless of their skin color, their nationality, and those differences, would be treated equal. We chose not our singular interests or identities, but rather our country. In this letter, Dr. King says, one day the South will know that when these disinherited children of God sat down at lunch counters, they were in reality standing up for the best in the American dream and the most sacred values of our Judeo-Christian heritage. It's not a taking, but there's room at the table. In this room today, we've heard from Representative Exum to myself, and over our generations, we have continued to fight and continue to see progress, but we know that the work is not done. And as much as we like to believe that we have been deliberate in solving these injustices. We have young people who, through their eyes, know that we need to continue to work for them and that they need to continue work for themselves. So the last quote I'll end with from the letters, in the themes of what we've heard today, is to talking about the tensions between being a moderate when it comes to our issues. I have reached almost the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I can't agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically feels that he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by the myth of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait until a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than the absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. So again, I hope that we do not walk away from this tension. We all have something to give to maintain this miracle that is these United States. I want to acknowledge our young people who, with their own eyes, are not only watching us today, but have been watching and marching in this world to find their place. And again, across these generations, I would like if everyone would stand and acknowledge young ladies from the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Early College in Denver, Colorado, who have said to the world, to know justice is to know peace, who have started a podcast, changed curriculum, been featured on Good Morning America, so that they can be seen in this world and take their place as one of our neighbors and one of our leaders. Please welcome Alana Mitchell, Kalia Yazar, Danny Mitchell, Janelle Nanga, Kanadi Jackson, Sierra Noel, Atalia Lee. Please welcome these young ladies. Thank you. At Denver Public Schools, they worked to ensure their faces and their voices were included in curriculum. And so we would like to acknowledge Denver Public Schools, Tamara Acevedo, Theo Shaw, and Kiara Roberts, their teacher and the supporter of their podcast, which you can find online. Thank you.